support by walking alongside NICU families and staff at Walk for Winnie. Join 27 Community Connection at SeaWorld Orlando Saturday, September 30th, as we walk to honor the thousands of babies cared for in the NICU.
Your support will make a big difference in the lives of tiny babies every year.
For details, visit TV27.com.
For beach days or rain delays, when hurricanes hit home or tornadoes touch down, when experience really matters, no one knows your weather like Chief Meteorologist Tom Terry and the experts in Severe Weather Center 9. Tracking storms down to your street with earlier warnings so you have more time to prepare when you need it most. Trust the team in Severe Weather Center 9 to give you weather coverage you can count on.
Zanera called Action 9 with a classic kitchen renovation nightmare. She turned to a home improvement company that had a national reputation. During the installation, the contractor busted two pipes. It ruined her wood floors, it ruined the wall, and she's told this is your problem. Once Action 9 got involved, there was a big change. Her damages were covered. She got her kitchen back.
You helped me feel less helpless and more powerful.
When you have nowhere else to turn, we're here to help.
At Granny Nannies, we're able to provide that one-on-one care and build a bond and a connection.
When you are able to make a difference in their everyday life, it makes a difference in yours.
I do it with heart. I do it because I want to do it.
I am Granny Nannies.
This is a Hurricane Irma update.
And we want to bring you the latest. We now have a tornado warning. This is now for Osceola County, and it is for northwestern Osceola County. It's the storm that's moving off to the west at 35 miles per hour. Working on a track for you right now so you can show you who is in the path of this storm. But it was just issued, radar indicated, and we've been telling you that we could see more warnings popping up in Osceola County. Now watching this cell up in the northwestern portion of the county.
Rusty McCrane with you now. Take it over for Brian Shields. I'll be with Ebony for the next few hours. Let's go, first of all, directors, and take this full now that we're in this tornado warning. Thanks. And Ebony, if you want to give the specifics again, I'm going to put a track on this. As you said, moving west.
Yeah, it's moving west at 35 miles per hour. And again, Osceola County, the entire county under a tornado watch until noon. And we figured that as we continue to get more of these storms popping up and these individual cells kind of rotating through, that we could see more tornado warnings. And that's exactly what we're happening. Now, this particular cell is located over West Lake Toho, and it is making its way off to the west. So eventually it's going to be heading into Polk County as well. So although Polk County not included, we could certainly see that storm holding and maybe getting into that area. We're watching out for these quick spin ups as we get some of these rain bands moving into our area. And although it's a little bit tough to tell exactly what's happening with all the rain that's in place, now what Rusty is doing is he's taking a look at the winds. This is our velocity, and this is how we tell how strong the winds are. So this was actually radar indicated. A little bit tough to see where there might be exact rotation, but we have a little bit of a contrast in the color to kind of show us where this cell might actually be rotating, and that has been enough to prompt a tornado warning. So again, that tornado warning is in place for northwestern Osceola County. It's going to go until 11 o'clock. So we have about 30 minutes to watch this. Could see it expiring. You know, the warnings that we've had so far this morning haven't been all that long lasting, and that's really going to be the trend. Here's a look at some of the heavier rainfall just to the south. We'll have to watch watch that line. And then Rusty has a little bit more on what we're seeing now.
Here's the bottom line, Ebony. This is within a huge cluster of rain. You're never going to be able to see this tornado. Honestly, when I'm looking at the velocities, it's very hard to pick out where they're actually seeing the rotation. But what we are seeing is very strong winds, 50, 60 miles an hour. Okay, so this is high precipitation coming in with this rotation. We see a lot of brief spin-ups with these kinds of landfalling hurricanes. We're on the northeast quadrant. We're on the nasty side. We're on the side with the most rotation. So expect these kind of warnings to be issued many, many times as we go through the day. This is kind of just the beginning. And again, when you get the heavier rain, you get a stronger push of wind. And these are naturally rotating storms around the center of Irma, which again is way down to the Florida Keys. But the bottom line is the tornado risk continues to be high across the area. So again, let me go to velocity. And typically, when you're looking at a tornado, let me take off our watch warning here, you're going to be looking in this velocity area for reds and greens to be together. That would give you an indication that there are different winds of different directions. Right now, I'm kind of seeing pretty uniform wind direction, but obviously you can just see there's a little bit of a darker red right there. So that's the area that they're going to be looking at as this quickly races off to the west. These will also be moving very quickly because all the individual cells are moving quickly as well. So again, if you're in this area, and I'm just going to highlight where it is right there, you can see northwest sides of Osceola County, just south of what looks like City limits, just north of Point Siena. The other thing too of it is this will be crossing I-4, so there could be a small minor tornado moving across the I-4 corridor. If you live in Celebration, also get into your area of safe as well, because again, you just never know how long these could be on the ground. This will be moving very quickly because all the individual cells are moving quickly as well. So again, if you're in and these also, the history is they like to get on the ground for a brief time, they'll lift back up, then they'll drop back down. They're not consistent tornadoes. They kind of spin up and pop back down as we go along. So we have to really be vigilant here, especially in northwest Osceola County, towards Celebration and Kissimmee. But again, let me go back to velocity mode here. Continue to look at that real quick. And again, I just don't see a lot. Now, one thing I will see, let me stop this real quick, Ebony. I want to query this. The winds are going to start picking up in this area regardless here. Let's take a look at this real quick. Yeah, you can see easy 50-mile-an-hour winds here. So that could be minor damage. You're looking at tropical storm force gusts coming in with this. It's a very large cell with a little bit of spin to it. So 50-mile-an-hour winds, that's going to knock down some trees. These are the kinds of outer feeder bands that are going to start to knock out the power. It's not just going to be with the actual hurricane coming in a little bit later, guys, that we're just going to see the power outages. We've already had reports of sporadic outages, and these larger cells developing, they're going to aid in the power concerns as well. Yeah, so we'll have to watch out here around Intersection City, Champions Gate, Campbell, as well as Celebration, as Rusty mentioned, because this is what we're going to be dealing with as this cell makes its way through. Now, again, winds may be on the order of about 50 miles per hour, but then I just want to open up the view because we're also tracking this stronger line, or at least this line of heavier rainfall just to the south. Right now, we do only have that tornado warning in place, but we could see a few more taking shape as we see this line kind of pushing northward, seeing definitely some stronger storms moving through southern areas of Brevard County and even Osceola County. So it's this one cell near Kissimmee that we're really keeping a close watch on. Okay, I'm going to switch over to our other radar here, early warning Doppler 9. This is the live mode. We can take a look at this. As you mentioned, Ebony, again, if you look back down into Brevard County right now, all of those cells are showing signs of rotation. So we have to watch all of those coming on shore. It's very classic for us here. And again, I want to mention that this warning goes until 11 a.m. So this is for the next 25 minutes. Again, some of the areas that are in this warning include Intersection City, Champions Gate, just south of Kissimmee. This would cross I-4, and then we'd have to see if the Weather Service extends that warning into the northeast sides of Polk County. But the bottom line is, you see this red polygon, friends. If you know you live in this area, I want you to go ahead and take your precautions. Just get into your safe area. It's going to be very hard to determine if there is a tornado on the ground, where the actual rotation is. But the bottom line is, I know one thing, all of those areas that we just mentioned are going to experience much higher wind gusts in excess of 50, 60 miles an hour. Yeah, and even though this is the tornado warning we're honing in on, what we were showing you as far as that line of strong storms, we've also had winds gusting now up to 67 miles per hour in southern Brevard County around Barefoot Bay. And there you can see on the radar image that big area
area of red and yellow moving through Brevard into southern areas of Osceola. That is an area to watch, too, because we've seen some very high wind gusts. And, of course, you can see that tropical storm wind report of that gust near Florida Tech. That was that 67-mile-per-hour wind. So this will be the case. Although we're not seeing any other tornado warnings, we could certainly see more of these cells kind of rotating as they do push inland. And we're also taking a look a little bit further to the north. Let's go back into that cell just to see if there have been any changes, because this warning does go for another 20 to 25 minutes or so. So again, Intersection City around the Kissimmee area doesn't look too impressive on the radar, but then again, we're going to be seeing some of this as we go through the day. So radar indicating some rotation with this, and that's really going to be what we're going to deal with throughout much of the afternoon as these cells kind of lift in and push from east to west across the area. So I-4, luckily not many people out on the roads as we've been seeing, and that is good news because this rainfall coming in with it is going to be very tough to see through. So you definitely want to make sure that you are seeking shelter in the lowest level, and then make sure you put as many walls between you and outdoors. Stay away from the windows at this time here into Osceola County.
Okay, so this is the terminal Doppler, Ebony, out of Orlando International, MCO, and this is a very close radar to this. So let's take a look at this and look at it. Again, you can just see why. There was a little bit of spin up just to the south of Kissimmee. It really does look like it's a large area of heavier precipitation. And again, it's going to be very difficult to determine if there's anything within that. Just to be quite honest here, the Weather Service, when they see a little bit of rotation, they'll go ahead and issue the warning, and then they'll see how it plays out, because these are very low base storms. It's a very hard environment to be able to look at the velocity and pinpoint, say, okay, that's exactly where we know that there's a tornado. This is the issue that we're going to have. And to be quite honest, this is something that we're going to be dealing with as we go through the remainder of the morning hours. I'm just taking a look at a couple of winds here, Ebony. And again, this is very close from the terminal Doppler, which is located at the airport. So it's a very close radar, would be the closest one that we have in the area. I don't see much right now, looking at a few things here, but the bottom line is there's going to be more wind, if nothing else. So we have to watch out for that. There's going to be some 50-mile-an-hour winds regardless if you live in this area. I'm going to go ahead and go back to what we call our reflectivity, which is what you guys would typically see. I'm going to stop it. I'm going to put a time of arrival here for some folks, just in case you're wondering, okay, Rusty, am I in this? What's the deal? I'm going to do it from the area of concern. It's going to basically be on the northern side of this back cell, moving to the west at around 35. As you mentioned, Ebony, this would be getting into the northeast sides of Polk County, kind of brushing the Polk-Osceola County line for a while here, just based on the county line configuration. So I'm going to say just south of Celebration, Loftman, Reunion, Intersection City. Moving off to the west is Wood Cross I-4 here in about 4 or 5 minutes. Then we'll see if they continue the warning into the northern sides of Polk County. If you live up there north of Polk City, there would be an issue there. I would not play around, play it safe, get into that safe shelter.
Yeah, if you're in the path of the storm, it could certainly weaken. However, even though that warning doesn't extend into Polk County, you could experience some of the same wind conditions. So as that particular cell moves in, it's going to be putting down the heavy rainfall, and then we could also find the winds kicking up. Maybe not as strong if it does continue to weaken as it pushes over into Polk, but maybe on the order of 40 to 50-mile-per-hour wind gusts. So we'll certainly need to watch out for that. Right now, not seeing any additional information with it, but as we take a look and analyze it, we do know that it is producing some heavy rainfall, and at least those winds may be upwards to about 45 to 50 miles per hour.
Okay, guys, we're going to keep a close eye on this cell. Obviously, there's still a tornado warning in effect till 11 a.m. We'll look at that. If we see something that is very pertinent, we're going to come back on and tell you about it. We're also going to keep an eye on those cells down into Brevard County right now. But the bottom line is we anticipate the tornado risk to continue to increase as we go through the day as Irma gets closer to us. Right now, though, let's get back to some more information with Vanessa and George.
We want to tell you about some information we just have from Lynx as well, saying that they've ordered all the Lynx services to be off the streets to comply with Central Florida's emergency operations request to keep the roads clear. So that's everyone off there. But they do say they have about 100 bus operators and employees on standby to try to get service going again once the storm passes and it is safe.
And talking about once the storm passes, obviously curfews are all over the place here in Central Florida. Later on tonight, for example, not a mandatory curfew, but Polk County is now strongly encouraging all residents to restrict travel on the roadways beginning at 11 a.m. So in 18 minutes from now, they don't want you to go anywhere. So that's going to happen out of Polk County. Also, shelters. Remember, we interrupted that news conference. Orange County was having a news conference regarding shelters.
They have 18 shelters, and 3 of those are pet-friendly shelters, because that's a really big deal for some people who are evacuating. Some people will stay behind because they don't have any place to take their pets. So they have 3 pet-friendly shelters open, and they're adding an additional one at Bigelow Community Park.
Yeah, because Barnett Park was near capacity at one point. Oak Ridge High School, also pet-friendly, near capacity perhaps. So you may want to go ahead and check our website, WFTV.com, where we have all sorts of information, including the sheltering information out of Orange County. All right, so what picture is this we're seeing as we do the split screen here at 10:42 during our continuing coverage of Hurricane Irma? Anyone know what image that is? Regardless of the image. Oh, that's WPLG. So that's a Miami image. WPLG is the ABC affiliate down there. Okay, so it made landfall at 9:10. And
in the Keys.
In the Keys. And look at the effects here in Miami. I have a friend of mine staying at a building on 29th Street. She's been giving me all sorts of pictures and photos. You can check out my Facebook page and WFTV's as well. And she's describing staying in this building from 1960, whatever it is, on Miami Beach, and feeling the building swaying. So she has hurricane shutters. She sent me a picture of the 14th floor, the top floor, and the hallways. You see that drop ceiling kind of starting to fall because of water, because of pressure, because of the building swaying. So these are the effects, and this is why we tell you guys to go ahead and leave, you know, flood zones and leave barrier islands. And Miami Beach is a barrier island. It's an international city, but it's still a barrier Florida island.
And so important to mention that, because so many people are like, oh, Miami's safe, Miami Beach is going to be safe because of the shift, and we've talked about that. You know, the cone really, as Brian says, in this case, doesn't really make a difference because of the size of this storm. Everybody in Florida needs to be on alert. There's like no safe area if you're in Florida.
No, and we're talking a lot about South Florida right now because it's affecting South Florida right now. And in understanding how it's affecting South Florida and seeing that image right here to the right of your screen, which looks like it's off some sort of terrace because you can see the palm trees right in front of it, by talking about what's happening down there and seeing the images, we're getting a better idea of what we can feel here. Even though the storm is, you know, a couple hundred miles away from Miami, the eye is, not the storm. The effects are right there.
All over Florida.
Yes. Some of my family, they don't have power. Some still do at this point. In this break, I'm going to call my cousin, see how she's doing in Pembroke Pines. That's in Broward County. So Miami-Dade County, then Broward County. And then, you know, the counties are going to start feeling it as the hours go by, and then we're going to feel it as well.
And utility officials are already saying there are at least 1 million customers in the state of Florida without power now here at 10:45. That will be homes and businesses, not people. Those are just customers. So many more people now without power. One other thing we need to mention before we move on, and that is when Orange County Mayor Teresa Jacobs was having the news conference there, she talked about the staging area at the convention center, and you and Raquel mentioned that as well earlier, that there are crews there from Duke Energy, OUC, Black Hawk helicopters.
Yeah, I stopped.
Did she say Black?
Yeah,
yes, that's what she
Black
said.
Hawk helicopters?
Yeah. And the Red Cross as well, like 1,500 vehicles. That's the staging area, so they will be in place to help us once the storm passes, and it is safe for them to get out on the roads as well.
One more thing, by the way, we're monitoring Severe Weather Center 9. They're going to interrupt us whenever they get something important too, and we have reporters out in the field as well. But I want to point out, so you're watching us, right? You trust us, right? Let's say you have someone in your house who speaks Spanish. Maybe you're translating what's going on. Well, guess what? We have 6 meteorologists back there. One of them is bilingual. And by the way, George and Tom also speak Spanish. George Waltenberger and Tom Terry. But Irene Sands, our certified meteorologist, is fluent and bilingual, and she's with our one of our partners, 107.3 Éxitos. That's the radio station, 107.3 Éxitos. Irene Sands is giving updates on there, and she and I were doing some updates on Facebook in what we call Spanglish, so English and Spanish, so everyone could have understood what was happening yesterday, the day before, as we go up to this, and we're going to continue to do it today.
All right, important information right there. Preparations are underway at Gatorland ahead of Irma's arrival as well.
Yes, many of our theme parks getting ready for this storm. Channel 9's Carla Ray is asking what's being done now to keep the water at a safe level for the Gators.
Of course, here in Orange County, we've been telling you about the preps that our theme parks and tourist attractions have been making ahead of Hurricane Irma. And as the rain starts to come down here, pretty good here in Orange County this morning, some of those preps are still happening here at Gatorland. We're here with Mike. And talk to us about what you've been doing this morning. The water levels are obviously lower.
Yeah, that's our main thing, is to allow for the 10 to 12 inches of water that we're expecting to get from the hurricane. Right now, we've dropped our main lake areas about 14, 15 inches, and we're going to continue doing that throughout the day, probably another 14, 15 inches to allow for that not storm surge, but to allow the runoff from Hurricane Irma and all the rainfall that's coming. But yeah, the alligators, you can see, this is what they do. They've been fighting these things for about 65 million years, and they don't really have any preference. When it gets bad, they'll take a breath, go sit on the bottom, and if they come up in an hour or so and it's still bad, they'll get another breath and go sit on the bottom.
I think this is the most Florida angle I've ever had on a hurricane story. You see, they're not really bothered by it. Talk about how high it normally is out here.
Yeah, you can see on the concrete slope that goes up to the island that you see the dark line. That's where the water level is usually at. And we're going to, like I said, continue to drop this another 14 to 15 inches. So we should have more than enough room. As far as the perimeter of Gatorland, we have 6- and 8-foot fences that take care of all the enclosures inside the park. And then there's another 8-foot perimeter fence that goes all the way around Gatorland property. So even if a tree falls on an enclosure and an alligator were to come out of the enclosure, we still have all those fences that it would have to navigate to get out. So we're not losing any animals.
How many gators do you have in here at this time?
A little over 2,000.
So that's a lot to keep track of, but we don't have to worry about any of them swimming out on our roads when this is all over.
Well, like our CEO said the other day, if you see an alligator in your neighborhood swimming down the street, it's not ours.
And just talk to us about the equipment you have to use in situations like this. This is pretty common for you to have to do this.
Right. We have a system set up already with 2 hurricane pumps, which are big water movers. They can move about 500,000 gallons a day. And then we also have a backup diesel-operated 6-inch pump that can also move a whole lot of water. So if we turn all those on, we can drop this thing down to where it's dry almost.
And you're going to drop it down lower than it is right now?
Yeah, so probably another 2 feet.
All right. How long will that take?
Most of the day.
Okay. All right. So those preps still going on out here in Gatorland. I hear some gators behind me excited about the rain. Of course, they're going to have plenty of room to move around once those water levels drop and the rain is allowed to fill in out here. We'll send it back to you.
Okay, guys, Ebony and Rusty here with you. We do have a new tornado warning for the northeastern sides of Polk County. So Ebony and I were actually looking at the new 11 a.m. advisory from the Hurricane Center. We'll show you that in just a minute, but I do want to get to this warning, guys. So let's take that full screen. So we're going to have Osceola County now till 11 a.m., Polk County, the northeast sides of Polk County, until 11:15. So all they're doing is extending the warning for the same cell. We've been looking at that cell for the last couple of minutes. Here's what we see. We see stronger winds near and south of Intersection City. Again, there is rain all over the place. You're not going to be able to see this weak tornado unless it's right on top of you, if it's on the ground, but you need to treat it very seriously. So just moving out of Intersection City into Reunion, these are going to be relatively rural areas of northeast Polk County, Ebony, but the communities of Ava and Berry between 11:13 and 11:15.
Yeah, that's right. And you can see that the rain is quite heavy. We also have been tracking the wind field around it, or the winds around it, and we're seeing winds maybe upwards to 75 miles per hour, 50 miles per hour. But notice now that pink shaded area where we're seeing the higher winds are on the move. So this cell is pushing off to the west, and that's a good thing that it is in a rural area. Again, we're going to be seeing these very quick spin ups, and notice I-4 is right in the path. It's also very important to note that not a lot of people are out on the roadway, so that too is good, because this will be the case as we go through the day with all the rain that we're seeing and all those individual cells kind of rotating inward. We are going to see more tornado warnings. As of now, it is Osceola County as well as Polk County, where we do have that warning now extended across the northern portion of both of those counties.
Listen, if you live in Laughlin right now, the winds are really picking up, guys. It doesn't matter if there's a small spin-up tornado. This thunderstorm complex is producing winds of 60 to 75 miles an hour. We're getting close to hurricane force gusts within this thunderstorm complex, and this is coming from the terminal velocity radar out of MCO. So this is a very close radar, meaning that the queries that I'm showing you are fairly close to the ground. They may not be exactly at ground level, but they're close enough that this would translate to at least 55-mile-an-hour winds at the surface. So these are very strong wind gusts coming out of this cell. And again, it is moving off to the north, to the west at around 35 miles an hour. Now, the other issue is we are in the throes of what's going to be the potential for tornadoes, friends. This is just the beginning. Our southern sides have really been getting hammered pretty hard. The bottom line is, as the rain intensity picks up, so will the threat for tornadoes. There's just just more energy coming onshore as those feeder bands get a little bit stronger. Ebony mentioned there was some good gusts down in the Barefoot Bay area.
Yeah, 67 miles per hour. We're noticing that with that band of rain that's coming in. It's breaking up just a little bit, but notice how intense that rainfall is. So it's going to be very, very heavy. It has definitely, as you go ahead and put a loop on it, it's kind of broken up, but still some heavy rain embedded in that.
Here's what I want to show you as a meteorologist, and I'm looking at some things. I mean, this is the tough part of what we're going to have to do. You see this little void here in the radar, this little hook. Those are the things that the Weather Service office are going to be looking at and saying, okay, is that spinning up to a tornado? Because that kind of rotation, you can just see that nice little appendage there just west of I-95 in Brevard County. You know, they'll have to keep an eye on that. On the back end of that, you get those little hooks, and that could spin up a brief tornado. There were many tornado warnings yesterday in the Miami area, and we fully anticipate that picking up here in Central Florida. So that's something we'll have to monitor. Again, if you are under a tornado warning, please take it very, very seriously. You get to your safe area just like you would in the height of Hurricane Irma as it gets a little bit closer to us. So we'll continue to monitor that. Let me go back real quick, run through these again.
Okay, now that's...
Well, no, they extended the tornado watch.
Okay, yeah, so that is new.
It would make sense, obviously, if they issued a tornado warning for Polk County. Yeah, they're going to put a watch there. But here's what Ebony and I anticipate. As we go deeper into Sunday, the tornado watch will be extended north and will more than likely cover all of Central Florida. So if you're listening to us right now, viewing us, and you live in Central Florida, you'll have a tornado threat that will get higher the deeper into the day that we go. Right now, though, we're looking up into the northwest sides of Osceola, the northeast sides of Polk County. And again, it's going to be hard to really interpret this. What I really like to go and look at, though, is the velocity mode here. And again, Ebony, with this, you can just see at least the stronger winds. Now, in a classic tornado, you would see green and red pixels together. That would indicate that there are winds in different directions. Here we see pretty uniform winds. You see all reds on this velocity, but there's different speeds to those.
Yeah, and that's what we're noticing just off to the southwest of Laughlin. That's where we get a little bit of pink and a little bit more red, and that is indicating where some of those stronger winds are and where we could see a little bit of rotation. So that's what we're watching out for. But then also, as Rusty was mentioning, as we go through the day, this threat will increase northward because these bands are lifting north across the area. So they're just going to be lifting, especially as Irma lifts northward. We're going to have those bands kind of rotating in and pushing northward. So definitely some of our northern zones will get involved in this for the second half of the day. So just keep that in mind and make sure that you have a way of getting these alerts in the event that you end up experiencing power outages. So our WFTV weather app would be a good source for you. If the power goes out, you can still get these warnings because we are going to see more warnings in place.
Okay. Also, again, I'm putting this track on the area of concern. You see that pink just southwest of Laughlin. That's the strongest wind. So this now does include Polk City. So we have friends who live in the northern sides of Polk County, north of I-4 from Polk City up to the Pointer area. I know some relatively small communities. Let them know there's a tornado warning in effect. This is something we will monitor. This goes until 11:15. It'll expire in Osceola County at the top of the hour.
It has since expired.
They let it go. Okay, that's good. So we are now talking about Polk County. The other big piece of information, and this is just coming in, is the new full advisory from the Hurricane Center, guys. If you want to, go ahead and take us back on screen, and we'll talk about this real quick. So we just got the 11 a.m. update from the Hurricane Center, and I want to double check that this is the new information, right, Ebony?
I believe that is the new information. Yeah, we've been kind of monitoring the direction, kind of thinking that it was going more north, and now officially it looks like now it is making its way north at 9 miles per hour. Winds, though, do remain up to 130 miles per hour, so still a Cat 4 at this time.
Okay, so they basically didn't change the strength. You got 130 mile an hour winds. It's a Category 4 hurricane. You have movement now north at 9, so basically a due north jog, as we had been noting the last several hours. Still forecast to move in a north-northwest fashion. You're looking at landfall somewhere near the Fort Myers area, Port Charlotte, later this evening as a strong Category 3 hurricane, 125.
Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah, again, it's like bathwater down here, guys. And although there's some shear that Irma is finding to the north and to the west, we really feel like that the warm waters will overcome most of that shear, and it might lose a little bit of intensity, but it's not going to get knocked down too much. Then they basically kept about the same path. It kind of scrapes Tampa and then moves back offshore near the Big Bend area. Some of the models that we were looking at this morning try and push it a little bit more west offshore, but again, impacts to Central Florida of 15, 30 mile shift west is not going to really have any change to what we're going to see.
No, it definitely remains the same. We are still on the wrong side of this system, meaning that we're going to get those stronger winds and we're going to see that tornado threat really existing throughout the day into the overnight hours, unfortunately, and into Monday.
Yeah, so here's just a little bit more up-close shot of this. Again, you've got basically landfall near Fort Myers coming right up the Tampa Bay. Would not be good news for them. You have storm surge issues for both of those areas that I just mentioned. And again, don't focus on the cone because as we've mentioned, and we'll do it until our breath runs out, Irma is such a large storm. We really have to worry about the entire enormity of Central Florida to have hurricane force winds. We'll go over that coming up here real quick. Let's take a look at the satellite imagery, see what you think here out of this one.
That was Jose.
That was Jose, yes. And again, let's take a look at this real quick, Ebony. So you've got, the landfall there, Cudjoe Key, which is just east of Key West, between Key West and Marathon, moving due north. One thing I see is, and again, let me zoom this out just a little bit. You see that there is a little bit of drier air nudging in the northwest side. So this looks a little bit more ragged. But I like to look at that center. It's such a concentric core that the core of the storm has not been damaged, if you will, by that dry air trying to come in.
No, not at all. And take a look at the east side. Still plenty of moisture and still a lot of convective activity right around that core.
And again, that's the side of the storm we're going to be on, friends. And so the winds will be picking up. If you live in the southern sides of Central Florida, we expect you to start to see sustained tropical storm force winds over 39 miles an hour beginning in the afternoon hours. And then those hurricane force gusts beginning to move in very late tonight. We'll take you county by county on that coming up in just a couple of minutes. Vanessa?
Just want to jump in there. Can you talk to us a little bit about how any land interaction might affect this? Because we know it first made the landfall there in the Keys. What did they do in terms of what we can expect here? Well,
obviously the Keys were so small it did absolutely nothing. But when the eye interacts with land, you typically get there to be a little bit of a reduce in the winds because obviously it feeds off the warm waters. And if you can get the core on shore, we see the winds drop. We saw that a little bit when it was interacting with the northern side of Cuba. So although you don't want to jinx our friends in Fort Myers, if it moves on shore earlier, it may weaken the winds a little bit rather than staying right along the coastline. If the eye can stay offshore, we would more than likely have a little bit higher wind gusts here in Central Florida.
Because that's one of the questions people had.
Sure.
Do we want it to continue to go west and make landfall, let's say Tampa or north of that? How will that affect us? Or do we want it to hit land sooner? Will that weaken sooner and affect us less?
Well, it's like the lesser of two evils.
It's a bad case scenario. Right, either way, because it's either Fort Myers or Tampa that would end up getting hit hard if there was a landfall in either location. So it would make it maybe a little bit better for people further north, but for any of our state, it looks like it would definitely be a bad situation.
And the wind field is so large, guys. This is such a massive storm compared to an Andrew or Charlie that a 15-30 mile shift is not going to make much of a difference. It doesn't matter if it's onshore or offshore near Tampa. We're also to get hurricane force gusts here in Central Florida. We might lose a few miles per hour if it's a little bit farther off to the west. We'll just have to see how that plays out. I mean, obviously you'd like this thing to kind of get on shore and then slow down a little bit. That might help things out, but the forecast is actually for the forward speed to pick up. What was the last advisory speed?
It was
9?
Moving at about 8, so now it's moving at 9. So just a small shift in that overall winds or overall speed of movement, and we could see another slight increase as we go through the day. But overall, as far as the impacts here into Central Florida, things are not going to change all that much, unfortunately.
And it's amazing, guys. I mean, take a look at this. The core is now just north of the Keys. And if I draw a line, look, the rain associated with this is going to extend well over 400 miles.
Up the southeast coastline, we're seeing some of that moisture lifting.
It's just amazing. So that just shows you the breadth of this storm and the fact that we're getting into it. And again, the closer you get, you're going to get more wind energy, more impacts, more tornado threats. And this is all going to be on the northeast quadrant, which we are going to see across all of Central Florida. The bottom line is the weather will continue to go downhill through the day. We're in the throes. There's just no scenario where I see us getting out of seeing some damaging conditions here in the area.
And another thing I want to ask about, you mentioned the wind field. That is really something we have to pay attention to, because even if you see the winds and you're like, okay, they're not going to be triple digit here, the point is we may get pounded by wind for like 20 hours.
Absolutely. Tropical storm force winds extend out to nearly 200 miles from the center of circulation. Hurricane force winds around 60 miles, but those are sustained. Then you get the gusts. When you're talking about winds above 74 miles an hour, you're talking about areas where mobile homes, you should not be in those. That's why they order the evacuation. So you got to get out of the manufactured homes. Anyway. coastlines. We still expect hurricane force gusts there.
Tornado, and you hear the alarms.
Ragazzi, eccoci qua, sta cominciando adesso di brutto. Brutta situazione, ragazzi. E ancora non è arrivato l'occhio.
Our purpose is to encourage strong ethical standards and provide local community support. CF88 provides leadership and funding for statewide high school programs. We are the primary partner in the $10 million Professional Automotive Training Center at SCC. And annually, CF88 presents the Central Florida International Auto Show. We are the Central Florida Auto Dealers Association. And with your help, we are building a better community.
Wouldn't you love to dump your old car into the lake? Dump your old car at Greenway Dodge instead, because this week you can drive a new 2017 four-door Jeep Wrangler for $49 down and $289 a month with any trade worth $3,000. Or get the new 2017 Ram Crew Cab, $49 down and $329 a month. That's the Crew Cab for $329. Dump your old car at Greenway Dodge's summer clearance event. Click greenwaydodge.com.
Insurance companies would have the public believe that injured people are often motivated just to make a quick buck. That Florida is filled with exaggerated claims. Actually, we've not found that to be true. Our clients want what is fair and just, to be treated with respect. Nobody wants to be injured, to worry about medical bills, their jobs, and well-being. Our attorneys are here to help the injured with knowledge and experience. Bogan Munz & Munz since 1979.
Storms here can move 65 miles an hour. I've covered tornadoes moving at almost 70.
At Channel 9, we have the most advanced technology. We're looking for signs of spin, rotation in case a tornado drops out.
That's why we have the experienced team that we have.
We want to give you the time frame of when the storm's going to hit. We can let you know where a storm's going to be, when it's going to be there, and what you need to know to stay safe.
This is what we do. We take pride in this. I'm going to be here, and we're all going to be here. And that's coverage you can count on.
Time and temperature is brought to you by Morgan & Morgan.
This is a Hurricane Irma update.
We've been talking about this would be an issue all day. Today we have another tornado warning.
Yes, let's go right over to our certified meteorologist now, Rusty McCraney, and meteorologist Ebony Dion. Guys?
George, Vanessa, we're going to have to deal with this like you mentioned. This will continue to be a trend, especially in our southern zones, Ebony. So new warning for Brevard County. This is for the friends.
Huh? Yeah, I'll take you first. Have you ever heard of Operation Human Shield? We're about to operate it. Oh, yeah.
Dude, you know there was a stop sign outside, I was on the floor. That shit's pretty backed up by the feet.
Wind gusts gusts over 60 miles per hour times. And now this is where we do have that tornado warning in place. It does include Palm Bay. So we have about 25 minutes left on this warning because the cell is on the move. 40 miles per hour. It is moving by very quickly.
Ebony, it's raced by. I'm going to show you the velocity here, and let me take this storm track off. This is what the Weather Service looks for. Do you see this little hole right here, guys? And let me just circle this for you. Do you see this right here? That's what they're looking for. It's a little change in the wind. You see everything is green, then you see those little maroon colors. That's what they're looking for with the rotation as it moves on shore. And you can just watch it. Watch as it goes towards the barrier islands. It picks up a little bit, and boom, that's when they issue the tornado warning. So when we're talking about seeing reds next to greens in this velocity, this is exactly what we're
as it pushes off to the west.
Okay, and again, these are not going to be the high-end tornadoes. We don't.
Tornado, and you hear the alarm.
The future.
Ragazzi, eccoci qua, sta cominciando adesso il brutto. Brutta situazione, ragazzi. E ancora non è arrivato l'occhio.
Of the tornado warning that we were watching in Polk County. So it's continuing to push off to the west, but holding together well enough that they are continuing on with that warning. So that cell definitely needs to be watched as we continue to see it pushing off to the west, still around 35 miles per hour.
And when they say Sumter County, southern Sumter County, they really mean southern Sumter County. I mean, it basically touches the bottom there. So the bottom line is this will continue to race through the northern sides of Osceola County. So moving through Polk City as we speak, like you said, they just extended another 15 minutes. This would be then headed into Pasco County and maybe even the northern sides of Hillsborough County. But that's the other thing as well. And Ebony, as we're looking at this, and I put on those shear markers, you can just see down into Polk County, Haines City, into Winter Haven, we have more and more of those early rotation signs into Osceola County. Again, these are not tornado warned cells, but they're rotating cells that could produce brief tornadoes.
Yeah, and let's open up the view because this is the band of rain we've been talking about that we needed to kind of watch as it moved in and kind of lifts northward. So we're watching this area of heavy rainfall stretching from the coast all the way over into Polk County, and this is more of a line, so we'll be looking into this line very closely. Again, already some indication that there's a little bit more rotation within that line, just no tornado warnings for all of that just yet, but we're still getting more tornado warnings in right now?
This is a new position for Irma.
Okay.
It's moving north at 9 miles per hour, and it holds the 125 maximum
now
sustained
down to
winds.
So they dropped it to 125.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll definitely bring you back up to date with what's going on with Irma as well, but we just wanted to make sure that you knew where we do have those tornado warnings out. So that's a look at what we're dealing with now, that line of heavy rainfall and even some tornadic activity possible around southern areas of Brevard, and then also moving out of Polk into extreme southern Sumter counties.
Okay, so they haven't updated it on our weather computer yet, but the bottom line is that'll take it back down to a category 3.
Yes.
It goes to 125.
So already a little bit of weakening. Vanessa, did you have a question?
Well, we have a viewer who's asking a question about wind direction when it gets here to Orlando. I don't know if there's a way to tell this, but here's his question. He says Irma is approaching from the southwest and has a counterclockwise wind direction from in Orlando.
Huh? It's fun up there. Yeah, I'll take you first. Have you ever heard of Operation Human Shield? We're about to operate it.
Oh, yeah. Dude, you know there was a stop sign outside that was on the floor? That shit's pretty backed up by the feet.
We're going to see a shift in the wind, so it's
there's
going to
be a huge wind shift. So let me show you this graphic here, guys. It might take a second to load up. It's a big graphic.
Well, while you're doing that, I do want to pass along this new tornado warning for southern Brevard County. It goes until noon, so that could be what we were watching out around the Palm Bay area for. It's